It is time.
It's showtime.
We're on. It's showtime. It's Thursday. It's the Hot Talk Morning Show with Dave Priest and Liz Callaway. Hot Talk 99.5.
.905 Hot Talk 99.5 Hot Talk Morning Show with Dave and Liz. Dave Priest and Liz Callaway. Welcome to it. A rainy Thursday, but it's a Thursday nonetheless. One more day to go.
That's right. It's my favorite day.
There you go, because the weekend is here for you.
Yes.
In some kind of. 906, a lot of things to get to as we're talking about. Obviously, we're talking a lot about the political issues that are going on, and one of the main topics that are interesting to the people who are voting out there is terrorism abroad, homeland security, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the people, the groups rather, that's threatening that is ISIS. This coming weekend, Saturday, at the Myrtle Beach Education Center, CCU professor Joseph Fitsanakis is going to be having a discussion. It's open to the public. There are no tickets required. Just stop on by. It's 9:30 coffee, and then 10 o'clock is when the talk is going to be about the rise of ISIS in Iraq and Syria. Professor, thanks for coming in today. Appreciate it.
It's good to be here. Thank you.
Now, obviously, there's a lot of questions we can ask you as far as ISIS is concerned. I mean, a lot of people have used ISIS as kind of a selling tool for their campaign as well. They've talked about, well, you know, when they're talking about Jeb Bush, they said, well, Jeb, your brother gave us the rise of ISIS because of what he did back in the Middle East when he was president. Other people have blamed, Secretary Clinton and the Obama administration for not doing enough, which led to ISIS. In your opinion, what led to the rise of ISIS?
I will say that I was also kind of shocked about the partisanship that dominates the discussion about ISIS in the United States. I think the original sin, if we can call it that, it was the invasion of Iraq in 2003. Mm-hmm. If it weren't for that, it wouldn't have been an ISIS today. There's no discussion about this among experts. Of course, the withdrawal from Iraq, a hasty withdrawal from Iraq, also led to it as well. Okay. If there was no such withdrawal, there wouldn't have been ISIS today. You can also argue that if there had been no Arab Spring, there would have been no ISIS today, or a civil war in Iraq itself, there would be no ISIS today. So there's a lot of blame to go around. But you know, the house is burning down. So let's focus first on how to solve the crisis, and then perhaps talk about the the background that led to it.
Right.
So in your opinion, do you think that you know of a way that we can kind of not only contain ISIS, but to totally put out that fire? I mean, can we take the oxygen away from this organization and just kill it for good? Is it possible?
It's possible. It's going to be difficult. I'm a firm believer in the view that you can't defeat an adversary unless you first understand them, study them.
Do you think that our leaders today do understand them?
Sadly, no. I think the problem begins from the average voter and rises up all the way to the executive. The average American doesn't even understand the difference between Al-Qaeda and Taliban, which is a huge difference, a basic difference. These groups are totally dissimilar and have different agendas. The same applies to Al-Qaeda and ISIS to some extent. And I think the intricacies of these groups, I mean, currently in Syria, there's been an estimate of 7,000 militias active on the ground, all of whom have different agendas, different sort of leaders, different outlooks. Understanding those intricacies is critical to actually defeating the adversary. We're doing some work toward that. The reason that this is the first time I speak in this area personally about ISIS is because I think now we have enough background to actually start a discussion about the group. It's going to take some time. It's going to take leaders actually listening to the intelligence community for a change about how to go forward, and then taking decisive action.
Do you think there's a similarity? I know you're saying that they're all different. What are the things that are similar? Are we talking about Islamic fanaticism? Is that a common thread that goes through all of them?
Well, the similar things is the long-term goal. The long-term goal is to defeat what ISIS would describe infidel troops in the Middle East, including us, of course, the United States. The second goal is to basically topple all regimes in the region that collaborate with Western powers. And the third goal is to then unite all the quote-unquote liberated areas into a large caliphate, an empire with a caliph, an emperor at its head. That's the long-term goal. The tactics are the ones that are different, and that's what we have to focus on, I think.
Now, how strong are they still? I mean, you said the house is burning. Now, we've heard differing things from them. I know that we've blown up a couple $100 million of their money that's there. The people who are fighting in the area have taken some of their strongholds back, including maybe their capital, quote-unquote, of Raqqa. Are they still as strong as they were a year ago, or are we making inroads with the bombing that we're doing between the coalitions and the troops that are on the ground?
I think they're stronger now than ever before. They
Really?
currently have about 30,000 fighters, which is about 3 times the size of a Taliban. It's the most successful, the most well-funded, the wealthiest terrorist organization in the history of the world. It's true that they are sort of lost several cities recently. There's a question to what extent they actually wanted to keep them,
Right.
which is important in understanding the strategy that they have. But as all this is happening, for instance, yesterday there was an announcement in Baghdad that the city council is building a wall to protect Baghdad from ISIS. So, I mean, if that's true, we're talking about a very serious threat to even establish order.
And a big wall.
And a big wall. It has to be a
Now,
very big wall.
I have to sound ignorant here, but I have to ask you the question: what is the difference between Al Qaeda and Taliban? Because I thought they were very similar, and you said that most people don't know the difference. Now, what is the difference?
That's a good question. The Taliban is mostly an ethnic group. So the vast majority of Taliban fighters are Pashto ethnic people, right? So
Okay.
they're mountain people that live in the borderlands between Afghanistan and Pakistan who don't sort of recognize any state government. And their main concern is to just leave alone, go
So
away.
they don't want a caliphate.
They have no. They don't even know anything about America. Most Taliban who are illiterate and have no connection to the outside world don't even know that we exist. They don't even know about 9/11. We've got studies of people asking them, "Have you seen those towers burning before?"
But they just claimed responsibility for something recently.
Sure, and that's
So-
the leadership.
Okay.
Leadership is, of course, sort of more enlightened and sort of like more educated, but the vast majority of their fighters have no connection to the outside world.
Wow.
Now, you compare that with Al Qaeda, which is a sort of an organization that has an international agenda. Their goal is to spread militant Islam to the rest of the world, and they want to create an international coalition of Muslim fanatics. I mean, they basically are an international group. They have an international agenda. I mean, the members are not just members of one tribe. There are many Americans who are members of Al Qaeda, Europeans, and so on and so forth. You're not going to find that with the Taliban.
Do they want a caliphate? The Al Qaeda group.
Oh, absolutely. That's the ultimate goal.
That's
See,
the ultimate goal.
they're-
So that's similar to ISIS,
Sure.
but
Absolutely.
ISIS is more about the land grab.
Right. So for Al Qaeda, the emergence of the emirate at the end of the fight is something that's sort of distant into the future. They first want to defeat America. The whole idea behind 9/11 is to cause America to do something kind of crazy out of the ordinary and go to the Middle East, and then so we can fight them there and hopefully sort of destabilize American economy, which is what they did with the Russians back in Afghanistan in the 1980s, and so take on the other superpower. And once, as they call it, the head of the snake is defeated, then they can take on the local regimes that are supported by the United States, including Israel, Saudi Arabia, and so on and so forth. But that's a very sort of distant goal. Only once you defeat the adversary, then you take on the local regimes. Well, ISIS is a very different tactic. They're saying, well, we have to establish the caliphate now, and once we have a base, then we can spread through traditional territorial war, like Muhammad did many centuries ago. So they're going back to a more historically literal version of Islam, and it appears that it's gaining a lot of momentum right now.
We're talking with Joseph Fitsanakis, assistant professor of politics and geography. He's having a presentation this coming Saturday at 10. That's going to be at the Myrtle Beach Education Center, which is at 79th Avenue North, not on campus at CCU, 79th Avenue North. What is the appeal of ISIS that so many Americans want to leave here, including ones that just don't seem to have any kind of Middle Eastern connection, to go and join and be part of the fight?
The first thing I want to say about this regarding foreign fighters is that there's this misunderstanding that most people go there to fight. That is not actually true.
Okay.
Most people who go out there actually go there as professionals to join the sort of logistical aspect of ISIS. They're engineers, they're lawyers, they're doctors, and so on and so forth. So we've seen a tremendous influx of foreign fighters
Right.
And, of course, logisticians. The reason why there's so many more people going there from America as well is that al-Baghdadi, the head of ISIS, actually made a call, said, if you are serious about this, you come and help us now, because this is where it's all happening. So be part of history. To a large extent, you have people who are feeling marginalized in their societies. They feel that they are sort of losers and they have no social status whatsoever.
Right.
And they think that by going there, they can, A, be part of history, something bigger than what they are, and also be part of a group. Many young men actually go for sex. We know that for a fact, because they're promised several wives and what have you,
Right.
lootings from the war, and etc. Also, many others are not very ideological, not very religious even. They
Well,
just go for the excitement.
That's what actually kind of, and I've laughed about that on the air, when we blew up their banks, a couple of them, a couple of weeks ago, and they said, okay, you're going to have to be fighting for half salary this week. And I'm like, wait a minute, I thought everybody went there ideologically to fight for, what they believe was right. But we find out that it's like, hey, we're paying you this much more money than you can make in a month if you had a regular job doing whatever. And that's why we want you to fight with us.
Precisely, and it's all tax-free, particularly if you're a Muslim, right? So,
Yeah.
like everything else, you can compare it to previous times, sort of like the Spanish Civil War, etc., back in the 30s. People go for different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, of course, you won't be surprised to know that when some guy from Brooklyn ends up in Syria, the ISIS are not going to take him and put him in the front lines. They are very careful of who they put in the front lines. ISIS is extraordinarily professional in their way to fight. There's a reason for that, is most of their commanders are actually trained by Saddam.
We're almost out of time, and I just wanted to ask you this quick question. We had our president that visited a mosque for the first time yesterday. We have a Syrian refugee crisis. Some people call it a crisis. Other people call it a humanitarian effort. What do you think? People don't know what to think about Muslims in our community and allowing these refugees in. Do you have a statement or position on either of those?
I do. I think given the intricacies of the Middle East, which we often don't understand, and given the fact that there are many people in Islam who are very conservative in their outlook, but those who are violent conservative in their outlook are few, comparatively speaking. Studies show it's about 5 to 8%. That leaves about 92% of people who are appalled, for the most part, by militant Islam. It's going to be very difficult to defeat ISIS and groups like ISIS without the support of that community. Now, how exactly that support is generated and how it's maintained, it's another story. But you need local people on the ground. People have called it sandals on the ground, not boots on the ground, to defeat groups like ISIS.
The presentation is going to be happening this coming Saturday at 10, 9:30, the coffee social. So usually with coffee socials, it's a little bit lighter fare, but I mean, we're going to talk about ISIS, the rise of ISIS in Iraq and Syria. That's the name of the presentation, with Assistant Professor Joseph Fitsanakis from Coastal Carolina University. That is happening at the Myrtle Beach Education Center, and it's happening this coming Saturday at 10 o'clock. No tickets required. It's open to anybody who wants to stop on by. Professor, thanks for stopping in today. We appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
All right,
Thank
thanks
you.
so much. It's 9:19 on Hot Talk 99.5, Hot Talk Morning Show, along with Dave and Liz. More of your local news happening right now, your Hot Talk headlines.